This is a special interview with the Deputy President on NTV on Sunday. The Daily has decided to follow it up and break it down, the transcript of that interview, plus their own paraphrasing of the same. Story continues on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation. You can go there and read it for yourself. The other big one, Uhuru goes for loot in Swiss banks. Amount of money believed to have been stolen in Kenya is 72 billion shillings stashed in Swiss banks. But I want us to kick off with what's happening in schools. State acts staff on unrest in schools. Story has been captured on pages 4 of the Standard and page 2 of the Daily Nation. Why students are banning schools, report says students and teachers are unhappy with stringent rules being enforced by new principals. Police arrest 125 students as unrest in high schools continues unabated, while learners target dorms in fire attacks. And of course, what CS Amina Mohammed said yesterday as the state takes tough measures to curb unrest in schools. Police arrested 125 students. CS Amina said those students will be locked out of public universities. Head teachers will have to indicate in their leaving certificates that they perpetrated chaos in schools, and such students will also not get government scholarship, while their parents would be made to bear the cost of damage. Now, these are very tough measures. I need to introduce my panelist this morning. Sorry for that. Chris Wamalwa and Piki Minini. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
We're still hoping to be joined by at least 2 other members of Parliament, 1 senator, 1 member of the National Assembly, but we'll introduce them as they come in. So far, Chris Wamalwa is in studio. Let's start off from there. These are very tough measures. Do you think the CS is being too tough on the students? No admission to public universities. It will be indicated in their leaving certificates that they actually took part in such chaos. They will not be eligible for government scholarships, and their parents will have to pay for the damage.
First and foremost, I want to condemn this unrest in schools, particularly at such a time when they are preparing for the exams. And I want to salute the CS Amina. Of course, the measures he has put in place, to me, I do support. We cannot encourage issues of discipline. And many places you go, of course, they want to know the conduct of somebody, and that's why they always demand for the school leaving certificate. And indeed, if one of the students maybe was unruly, it must be indicated in the leaving certificate. I know many times some principals are a bit not very. They don't want to come out openly, you know. They want to give it in a skewed manner. I've gone to school, I've seen some people, they've been involved in strike, they've banned the schools, but when you look at their living certificate, it's not reflected. So indeed, to me, I do support this. If one way or another student leaders have been involved in this behavior, I think it should be in the living certificate. And again, nowadays, where you go, even when you want to be a house girl in a given home, people want to know, to have a certificate of good conduct.
But do the students actually get it? Because at this point, probably someone who's been out at university level or tammacking out there, they would know the importance of a good conduct certificate. They would know the importance of having a clean leaving certificate. They would know the importance of actually these scholarships. But can a Form 1 or 2 comprehend that this could actually come to haunt them later?
I think it's because of maybe ignorance. But everywhere you go, even if irrespective of what level of academia you have achieved, people will demand, they want a living certificate, or they'll demand certificate of good conduct. For instance, as politicians, the offices we go for, whether you've gone for parliamentary or wherever, we've seen many executive appointments. When the CSS, they appear, or the principal officers, one of the requirements is you must have a certificate of good conduct. So to me, it's very, very important, because notwithstanding the academic qualifications, people want to know what kind of attitude do you have, what kind of behavior. You see, you can be an A student, let's say you got a first class honors, everything, but when it comes to issues of the social behavior, the attitude, team working, you can be an A student and maybe your attitude is negative. For instance, when it comes to issues of teamwork, you are negative, and all that, you are destructive. In an organization, you can be very destructive. Because
the concern, Wamalwa, is that probably we are prescribing some punishment that is beyond the understanding of the students. These are still minors. You as an adult, we may understand the importance of these things. But for a Form 1, and I go back to the same thing, don't you think that a prompt discipline or punishment immediately would be a deterrent? That probably it could be time. There's some who argue that it would be time to reintroduce corporal punishment, something prompt, something immediate, as opposed to telling people you will suffer in the future, which to some children they may not really understand at this point.
I think some of the measures that have been put in place, we're not just saying that it is only the issue of living certificate. Living certificate, that those comments is among the many other measures. So to me, a punishment should be something severe enough that can be able to discourage that behavior. So if somebody gets to know, because they'll get to know what is the implication, what is the significance of this in future. So if it's just an issue of, you can see somebody burning a school and you're talking about corporal punishment. Corporal punishment, I mean, some of us who were noisemakers in school were used to be beaten, but after some 2-3 hours, you're okay. So to me, a punishment must be severe. Severe in the sense that it will be able to discourage somebody from that behavior recurring. But
Wamalwa, you are a parent, and bringing up a young child, you know that you cannot really punish them in advance, or you can't tell them that in future you will suffer this. A more immediate punishment works better. Don't you think that probably some of these things have happened or are happening because corporal punishment was stopped? That probably students know, I can do anything right now, I will not suffer now. Probably the suffering will come later, and by then things will have changed. That probably if we introduce corporal punishment, not necessarily to punish the perpetrators of such arson, but probably to deter even such action.
I agree with you, and in my house there's still corporal punishment. And the schools that my children go to, of course there's no corporal punishment, but there's a different way. And I'm one believer of this saying which says, spare the rod and spoil the child. Personally myself, if my grandmom wouldn't have been strict on me, I don't think I'll be a member of parliament right now. So I strongly believe that that immediate punishment is critical. And when it comes to disciplining children, the big problem we have in this country is many parents, when it comes to matters of discipline, they leave it to the teachers. I think it's the highest time that parents, when it comes to parenting, they should play a very, very critical role. And that's why you find many parents, including myself, they fear they don't want their children to go to a boarding school. Because when they go to a boarding school, they're likely to mix and meet other children that maybe their parents have not been very keen as far as discipline is concerned. And that's why you find most of the schools that are having these problems, they are boarding schools. You don't see day schools. For instance, like my kids go to Strathmore. In Strathmore, they don't, they value parenting. And that's why if you're a parent in that school, they even create time for the kind of training to see that you are trying to add value, the upbringing of that child. You're not just leaving it to the teachers alone. And this is an area where parenting is missing. When you monitor the upbringing of these children, some of them, the background they're coming from, if you watch keenly, you'll see the issues of discipline in discipline cases starts from the families they're coming from. Maybe their parents don't pay attention. And also the issues of the church. Church plays a very critical role as far as upbringing of children are concerned. Maybe Sundays they don't go to church, they just do their own things, because the church, in the absence of the parents, particularly Sundays, the children will also learn something of the good behavior, the moral values, how someone can survive in the society. You rarely see a day school doing what is going on. They are boarding schools. You are meeting children from different backgrounds. You find some parents don't pay attention. And I support what Amina has put in place, and I have confidence in CS Amina. She's a diplomat. Some would say she's too soft. I don't think so. Amina, that is most diplomats, the way they approach things, the way they communicate, you will think they are soft. But the measure they have put in place, and as a matter of fact, they are saying even they'll be arrested. Being arrested, that is an immediate punishment. So these children, they know this. We've been told they are fearing exams Those are some of the reasons. We don't know how true they are. But me, I blame the delocalization policy of the TSC. Because TSC coming up with this delocalization policy, they didn't look at the implication. You find, for instance, you've brought a principal, maybe coming from Mount Kenya, and is going to, let's say, in Luo Nyanza. First and foremost, they'll need time to get used to the culture of the area, to know the do's and the don'ts. You see, the principles that were already existing, they had developed rapport. They had known the character of some of the children, and they had developed some measures of punishment. But when you bring in them new principles, for heaven's sake, first they go to one place, they get a culture shock. They tend to start adjusting because they're talking of this high-handedness from the principles. And this thing must be all-inclusive. You must use a bottom-up approach. So this delocalization policy, we're also trying to blame it on TSC, and that's why we're having issues when it comes to unrest in schools.
Is it something you would oppose at parliamentary level, that delocalization politics?
Initially, when you look at the delocalization policy, it has merits and the demerits. And you can't just pick up somebody from coast, for instance, and take that person, let's say, to Western. There are some critical measures they should have looked at. For instance, my own opinion was this delocalization policy should have affected the newly employed young teachers. So that when you go to that area as a young teacher, and you know when you are young, it's easy you are kind of easy to get baptized in that particular environment. But when you transfer somebody who is 55, who is almost retiring, there's that element of rigidity. This person already is with family. This person is already old, cannot even survive on his own. He's looking after his grandchildren. But a young person is flexible, can go anywhere. When you look at the international best practices, one time I worked in multinational corporate organizations, they only take young people to different countries because you have time to learn, you have time to adjust. But you can't bring somebody who is advanced age, who is planning his retirement, and you change this person. Last time I was in Mombasa, I had been invited to go talk to the principals from my county, and we had the TSC, and they raised their issues. Somebody is going to the retirement. This localization policy is even, families are breaking up. So let somebody who is looking for a wife, the young person looking for a husband, let that person go to Nyeri, let that person go to Kisumu, and get a wife from the other side. But not a person who is retiring. Then you are coming up with the delocalization policy. You take most of these schools, most of them, they are the ones who have been affected by if you look at their principals, there are new principals who have just come in. They don't even understand the culture of that particular area.
Back to this measures put in place by CS Amina Mohammed, as she read them out yesterday, and you've talked a lot about parenting. But as a parent, don't you think that some of these measures will end up punishing the parent more than the student? If you as a parent, your student is denied entry into public university, your students, your child's living certificate indicates that they were involved in this or the other, your child is unable to join university, your child is unable to access sponsorship from government, don't you think that this is beyond the student, it's going to punish the parent?
A punishment is not just supposed to affect only the child, it's also supposed to affect the parent. The school, my kids, the schools they go to, some of the punishments they put in place, they even affect the parent more. Because
so that's the intention.
Yeah, absolutely. As a parent, you have a responsibility to ensure your child is brought up in a good manner. You must be part and parcel of the upbringing of your child. So when a punishment is put in place, it must also affect the parent, because as a parent, you have failed in one way or another. So the punishment should not just be on the child; it should also affect the parent, so that parents can take. They can be more responsible when it comes to parenting. Yeah. Now,
there's a lot has been said, and you mentioned briefly about how people perceive CS Amina as a person and whether or not she's able to tackle these things. Of course, she suffers a lot from comparison to her predecessor, CS Fred Matiang'i, who within 1 year did a lot of things. Fred Matiang'i, when he was fresh in the Ministry of Education, he encountered such a problem. He dealt with it decisively. He went on to deal with a lot more. Exam cheating and all these things, examination, the whole process. The people who feel that CS Amina Mohammed and her approach to issues could be partly to blame, and that people are apprehensive now that if at all she is not able to deal with this, even the progress made in examination cheating, curbing examination cheating, will be lost in the process as well.
You know, we used to be told that don't judge a book from its cover, and looks can be deceiving. I think with support, CS Amina can do much better than Matiang'i. CS Amina is a career diplomat. Diplomats cannot behave like Matiang'i. Let Matiang'i handle what he's doing, can handle the Mungikis or whatever it is. But a ministry like education, I think to me, the CS Amina's approach, it is all inclusive. I've seen her talking to stakeholders. And because she's a career diplomat, the way she's been brought up and her career, you can't get a diplomat behaving like the way Matiang'i handles issues.
CS Matiang'i's actions are very effective in that ministry.
No, but who says that Amina's actions are not going to be effective? CS Amina, she's consultative. That's why I said, let's not blame Amina because of her being soft. That's her approach, the way of doing things. We've seen some people are soft naturally. The way they communicate, the way to talk, that's their nature. But that does not mean they're not effective. CS Amina is a diplomat. He's a career diplomat. Look at where she's coming from. The way you approach diplomacy is public relations is very critical.
But is that what is needed right now? Diplomacy in such actions where students are banning schools?
Absolutely. There are some issues when you approach it in a diplomatic manner, you are likely to sort out the issue. In the next 2 weeks, one of the measures I've seen her put in place, that people who are masters on duty, instead of having 1, they're going to have 2 within the next 2 weeks. And to me, I find that's a very good measure, because we'll be able to detect in case of anything coming in. If one master is on the other side and on the other side, they should be able to discover that, or to discover that at an early stage, and they can put some mitigating strategies. So to me, what I want to tell the public is Amina is a diplomat, and her approach of doing things is not like the Matiang'i way. I think let's give her time, and I've no doubt that given her diplomatic skills, she can even be able to do better. Even she's managing. I mean, we've seen this unrest when it was there, the delocalization issues, but she has managed. I've seen her getting involved with the stakeholders. I've talked even to some teachers. Some teachers say, no, the good thing about this lady, she's she values participatory. She's gone to NAT, she's gone to Kupet, she's gone to the... Look at the way she's trying to sort out some of the issues. So I think let's give her time. I still have trust and confidence in her that she can be able to sort out that using her diplomatic skills.
There's also argue that from history, and we saw what happened with the raft of measures introduced by then Minister for Transport John Mishuki, the introduction of 14-seaters instead of 18, the introduction of seatbelts in matatus and all these things, and immediately after he was removed, a lot of that was lost, maybe not all. The same people who think like that, of that school of thought, would argue that the same thing is happening to the education ministry. The fact that CS Matiang'i came in, he was given a short period of time, he managed to introduce a raft of changes, but was not given a lot of time to actually ensure that those changes are institutionalized. That probably, if at all CS Matiang'i was left there in the education ministry for probably 2-3 years, some of these changes would have been entrenched, and we would not be seeing what we are seeing this, because school unrest was there last year. People are hoping that this year something should have changed.
Last year, school unrest was there, but it was at a lower scale. And that's why I said this year we're having this, and I'm putting across the blame on delocalization policy. Because last year, we never had the issues of delocalization policy. Some of these principals, they've gone to new environments, is when they are trying to adjust, they are trying to learn the environment, and students have been there. These students had been used in a certain trend. But when you bring in a total paradigm shift at that particular time, you need the leader to be able to learn the environment so that he can be able to know how to adjust. So to me, the problem here is not Amina per se. I'm blaming it on the new principles because of the delocalization policy. You are used to being here in Citizen TV. Tomorrow you are taken to Ramogi FM. The way you present, you need to know what is the target of Ramogi FM? What kind of audience are you looking at? first you must be able to speak their language. So you must be able to adjust. So these new principals have gone to new areas where there's this element of delocalization policy. They don't understand the culture. For instance, some schools, they take Githeri. Some other schools, they don't want to hear about the issue of Githeri. That kind of diet that you're giving them, it can also bring these issues of unrest. Some schools, the way you approach issues, the Parents Teachers Association is totally different. The BOM is totally different. So the new principles, this delocalization policy, which have been opposing from the word go, these principles are still adjusting. They are trying to learn the environment. Like where I come from, towards August, when we have this circumcision ceremony among the lawyers, you should allow schools to close a bit early. You'll find some schools, they've already started doing the practice. You bring in a new principal from an area where they don't believe in circumcision one way or another, there's going to have a, they're going to be, that controversy likely to be there. Okay. So any environment you go to, you must be able to learn that environment. You'll be able to know how to adjust, understand the students, understand the parents. So to me, the delocalization policy by TSC has also contributed to this mayhem that we are having.
Okay, just before the break, I can see Senator Samson Cherargei of Nandi has finally managed to join us. Good morning, Senator. Karibu sana.
Asante.
We've spent the last half hour or so discussing this unrest in schools with Honorable Chris Wamalwa. And probably just to get your opinion on what's happening just before we go on the break. Yesterday, CS Amina introduced a raft of measures intended to penalize anyone found culpable of this. Of course, police have already arrested 125 students, but the CS says anyone found culpable, they will not be allowed into public universities going forward. Their living certificates will have to indicate that they perpetrated chaos in schools, and they will also their parents will be made to bear the cost of damage. And you're asking the kind of approach the CS has adopted, don't you think it's more punishing to the parents? It's penalizing the parents more than the students.
Thank you and good morning, viewers. I want to say under Article 53, or is it so, child's best interest must take center stage in terms of any decision that we make. So I think it is too punitive, some of these raft of measures. Sometimes it is not about the law. It is about our values, our culture, our society. And therefore I've seen, and I want also to some extent media should be cautious, because it seems when, one of the medium of saying a particular school the metro has been banned, or a specific school has gone on strike, it is like infectious, it is across the country. And one of the things that has made all these issues to happen is because of the impending national examinations. The reason is because we have made national examination to be a rat race or something, that if you don't make it to the university, if you don't make it is like there is no future if you don't pass your Form 4 exams. So it means the cause of all this is the impending national examinations. So how are we looking? I've seen there are so many suggestions to reform education system, especially so that it doesn't become exam oriented. If we make our education system not exam oriented, we'll not be seeing a second term as a time when we have so many school unrest, because they know if you don't pass and join a college or a university, your life comes to an abrupt end.
But Senator, when you were in school, such things were not as common. What was different then? Is it the fact that there was corporal punishment then, and the punishment was immediate enough to deter such kind of behavior?
No, of course times change. The children of yesterday and the children of today, maybe of Sarawak, as different. We come from generation of Blue Band, or even a leftover Ugali. And I think it is because we have glorified the acts that we term as heroic, the issues of being indisciplined, the issues of being rude. But secondly, I want to agree with my good friend, Mheshimiwa Chris,